Imagine living thousands of years ago. There are no police officers, no courts, no written laws, and no prison guards. If someone breaks a rule, there is no official system waiting to punish them. Yet inside many ancient communities, people still followed leaders, chiefs, elders, and respected hunters. Why? Why would ordinary people listen to one person when that person had no modern army or police force behind him? Did ancient humans simply obey because they were afraid? Or was there something much deeper keeping the group together? The answer is surprisingly complicated. First, we need to understand that not every ancient society had a king or chief. Early human communities were often small groups of families and relatives, and leadership could be temporary. A person might lead during a hunt because he was an excellent hunter, while someone else might take charge during a conflict because he was experienced in fighting. In other situations, an older and respected person might guide the group because of their knowledge. Leadership was often based on usefulness, trust, experience, relationships, and reputation, not simply a crown. Now imagine a small group traveling through an unfamiliar landscape. They need water, they need food, they need shelter, they need to avoid dangerous animals and hostile groups. Every decision matters. In this environment, constantly arguing about every single decision could be dangerous. If the group sees signs of predators and the experienced leader says, "We should move," following that person quickly might save everyone's life. Leadership was therefore not necessarily about controlling people. Sometimes it was about helping a group make decisions when there was no time for endless debate. Experience was one of the strongest sources of authority. Ancient humans depended heavily on knowledge that could not be found in books. An experienced hunter might know where animals usually passed. An elder might remember where water could be found during a dry season. Someone who had survived previous winters might know which plants were safe to eat and which ones were dangerous. Imagine being hungry and standing in front of several unfamiliar plants. One person says, "I remember eating this one before." That person's knowledge could be worth more than almost anything else in the group. When someone repeatedly made good decisions, people naturally had reasons to listen. But there was another powerful force: cooperation. A human being alone is vulnerable. A small group can hunt together, protect children, share food, build shelters, watch for danger, and care for injured members. This meant that staying together was very valuable. If one person constantly refused to cooperate, they could create problems for everyone. So following group decisions was often less about blindly obeying one individual and more about maintaining cooperation. The group had a shared interest in preventing constant conflict.
And this is where things get interesting. Ancient humans were not mindless followers. They could disagree. They could criticize decisions. They could refuse to follow someone. In many small-scale societies, leaders had limited power compared with the absolute authority of later kings. A chief who became selfish, aggressive, or unfair could lose support. People could distance themselves, form another group, or choose someone else to lead. In other words, leadership often depended on people continuing to accept it. Think about food. If a leader controlled the distribution of an important resource, that could give them influence. But leadership could also work in the opposite direction. A respected leader might be expected to share food rather than simply keep the best portion for themselves. Generosity could increase someone's reputation. A person who consistently helped the group might gain loyalty. A person who took everything for themselves could quickly lose respect. In a small community where everyone knows everyone, reputation was powerful. Fear, of course, could also play a role. A physically powerful leader, successful warrior, or influential family could intimidate others. When larger settlements and more complex societies appeared, leadership could become much more hierarchical. Eventually, some rulers controlled soldiers, wealth, laws, and religious institutions. At that point, disobeying a ruler could have serious consequences. But this was not necessarily how the earliest human groups worked. The image of an ancient king sitting on a throne while everyone silently obeyed him does not describe all early human societies. There was also something psychological at work. Humans are social animals. We naturally pay attention to people who appear knowledgeable, confident, experienced, or capable of coordinating a group. Even today, when people face an emergency, they often look for someone who seems to know what to do. Imagine a dangerous situation where everyone is confused. Suddenly, one person calmly gives clear instructions. People may follow, not because that person is a king, but because uncertainty makes leadership valuable. Ancient humans faced uncertainty constantly. Where is the next water source? Is that sound an animal or another human group? Should we stay here or move? Is this food safe? Should we hunt today or tomorrow? A trusted leader could reduce that uncertainty. Instead of 20 people making 20 different decisions, the group could coordinate around one plan. That coordination could make the difference between success and failure. But there is an important myth we need to destroy. Ancient people did not necessarily obey their leaders without question. In fact, questioning leadership could sometimes be essential. If a chief repeatedly led the group toward danger, people had a reason to stop following. If a hunter claimed to know where animals were but repeatedly returned empty-handed, his reputation would suffer. If a leader demanded everything and gave nothing back, others could resist. Authority had to be maintained.
So perhaps the better question is not, why did ancient humans obey their chiefs? The better question is, why did ancient humans choose to follow certain people? And the answer is surprisingly familiar. They followed people who could provide knowledge, coordination, protection, experience, resources, or social stability. Sometimes they followed because they trusted them, sometimes because they feared them, sometimes because everyone else was following, and sometimes because the group simply needed someone to make a decision. Thousands of years later, the basic human tendency has not disappeared. We still look toward leaders during uncertainty. We still respect experience. We still follow people who appear confident or knowledgeable. We still argue with leaders when we believe they are making terrible decisions. The tools have changed, the societies have changed, and the consequences have changed, but the human need for cooperation in leadership remains. So the next time you imagine an ancient tribe silently obeying a powerful chief, remember that the reality was probably much more complicated. The chief's greatest weapon may not have been a spear, a crown, or even physical strength. It may have been something much more powerful: trust. Because in the ancient world, a leader could command people for a while through fear. But to keep people together, they often needed something harder to earn and much easier to lose: respect. Thanks for watching.